Is everyone still awake? Not too hungry? Someone need to shake a bit? Let's go. Years before I was born, philosophers and social scientists, they rejected the idea of truth. In fact, in the exact year I was born, a famous work was published. The government of Quebec in Canada commissioned French sociologist Jean-François Lyotard to write a report on the future of the exact scientists, especially with regards to technology. Now, Lyotard did this, and he called this the postmodern condition, a report on knowledge. In this, he tried to describe what was happening with scientists and other people. And he concluded that students no longer ask if something is true. They ask, what is the use for me? More shockingly, knowledge in postmodernity is no longer the search for truth, or rather, the production of knowledge is no longer an aspiration to produce truth. This man, that man, made famous the phrase postmodernity, which we use quite often, and he killed truth. Dead. Actually, it was dead already, and he just was one of the first to recognize it. And this all happened in the year I was born. I've never known a world that believes in truth. For me, the term is actually pretty meaningless. And yes, I can walk the walk and talk the talk because I'm an Adventist and we kind of get along. But I've grown up wholly in a world without truth. So Japheth asked me to preach on truth. It's a little bit ironic. But present truth is a wonderfully Adventist concept. And sadly, when I look around in the church, I think the people who love the word present truth most are the least likely to accept the ramifications. If present truth means truth changes, why do we want to hold on to the truths of our grandparents? As far as I can tell, the idea of present truth comes from 2 Peter, and it'll be on your screen in the King James as our pioneers would have read it. Wherefore I will not be negligent to put you always in remembrance of the things, though you know them, and be established in the present truth. I remember my grandmother warning me to remain in the present truth. And she clearly meant the truth that is present in our Adventist teachings. The truth, with a capital T. You know, the Sabbath, the state of the dead, the health message. That truth. But mainly the prophecies. My grandmother was a firm believer in the prophecies, and she knew them well, and she loved to make that truth present whenever she could. Sadly, as she got older, Alzheimer's came to visit, and she could not remember with whom she'd shared the truth. Now, my brother's a very nice guy, but he's also a terrible person. He's the kind of guy who will go hours out of his way to help you, and the next day will go the exact same amount of hours out of his way to irritate you, just for the heck of it. My brother Paul is his name. He went to a non-Adventist school, and he would always remind my grandmother when friends came to visit that they had not heard the prophecies yet. They had, many times. In fact, I think if we call one of my brother's friends up now, they can explain the prophecies better than most of us here. And literally, this is how I remembered. Every meal, Paul would say, Omar, have you told Troy about the prophecies? And happiness and joy, we would learn all about 2300 evenings and mornings and 1844 and whatever. And it speaks of my friends' godly nature, not being Christians, that they would come to dinner more than once. And thanks to the gift of Alzheimer's, they heard these prophecies quite thoroughly. Clearly, that dinner table truth made me the person I am today. Present truth, though, is not the prophecies. It's not the idea that we, as the Adventist Church, have the truth. It is, as we traditionally like to explain it, that we keep needing to look for more truth, for more light. Sadly, that's not what 2 Peter is about. 2 Peter talks about, as he says it, Parousia aletheia, the truth that lies before us, the truth that is with us, the truth here, but not now. When Judas betrays Jesus, Jesus says, "Friend, what are you here present to do?" When Cornelius' messages come to Peter, Peter asks, "What is the reason for your presence?" When Jesus comes to raise Lazarus from the dead, Martha runs to Mary and says, "The teacher is present, calling for you." This is not temporal present, but locational presence. In these examples, people are talking about someone being here as opposed to there, and not being here as opposed to with my grandmother. The present truth is not the truth of the present times. The present truth is the truth that is present with us, here. Now then, what is that truth? Do I need to say at this place that it may be Jesus? Jesus, born Emmanuel, God with us. Jesus who promises, whenever there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, I will be there. Jesus who said, I am the truth, and I'm pretty sure he was present at the time. Jesus who, after giving the Great Commission, prophesies to the apostles, I will be with you always. Jesus, the present one, the present truth. And this changes the fundamentals of faith. Present truth, old school, is all about revelation. Present truth 2.0, as I like to call it, it's all about relation. Old school is knowing the prophecies. 2.0 is knowing the one. But. This is the one project, and we stand by the saying here, Jesus full stop, all full stop. I think we're meant to say Jesus dot all dot or something, but I can't remember that bit. And I have to admit that I am somewhat academically minded. I wonder about things. I'm the kind of guy who reads the books and newspapers with a red pen, even the internet, scrawling little marks in the margins, asking questions, questioning assumptions. And when I first heard Jesus dot all dot, I did wonder, what does it mean? There seem to be 2 sentences here, Jesus and all. Do they belong together? Is there a relationship? Is Jesus all? Are there 2 things that are separate, Jesus and all? What is the relationship? How do they fit together? Does all mean everything or everyone? I want Jafer to answer that one later, because we tried to translate it in Dutch. It was very hard. Alles of iedereen. And where's God? Where's the Spirit? What about the Bible? I really like the Bible. We say Jesus all, but what do we mean? And how does this present truth, Jesus, fit in? Now permit me to theologize. But before that, a note. Stay with me. It might get a little bit tricky on the way. It might get hard. We're going somewhere, but the road is difficult. Yea, though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no Toms. Trust me, this too shall pass. We're talking about Truth 2.0, so about relations. And almost any reader of the Bible will have noticed that there is a relational nature in the Godhead. Jesus refers to the Father and the Spirit. The Father refers to Jesus and the Spirit. The Spirit speaks of Jesus and the Son. God and the Son. No one exists without the other. In fact, I'm brave enough to say that there is never any question about the Bible discussing Jesus or Christ in of himself. Christ is only ever defined in relation to God's actions here on earth. The Bible's Christology, high or low or whatever, is always relational. We say Jesus all, but that means by necessity we are implying Jesus all in relationship to God all. Think about the names attributed to Jesus. Isaiah 9 is a good one. For a child has been born to us, etc., etc., etc. And then we get 4 names. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The Messiah is called a counselor that is awesome, literally. A divine warrior, a father that is internally in fatherly relationship to his children, and an official in charge of peace. Now, these names are not Jesus' names. They are God's names. Jesus is not the Counselor or the Father or the Mighty God or the Prince of Peace. These names do not describe the Messiah, nor do they make the Messiah a God. the names here attributed to Jesus form not what we'd call an ontological statement saying what Jesus is, but a historical statement saying what Jesus does. They do not describe who the Messiah is. They describe the Messiah's place in history. They depict a unique being in a unique relationship to God. And they point to God's work on earth. And God clearly brought priests to hundreds in the Gospels through Jesus. God counseled by means of Jesus. God is mighty, supported by Jesus. God is the eternal Father of us and our brother Jesus. But God is these things and Jesus not. And as the one project, as Christians, we can be Christocentric, but we must watch out for Christomonism. Christ can be the center, but Christ is not everything, the all. So we say Jesus all, but what do we mean? Because Christ is the center of God's work on earth, clearly. Christ and not God. Christ is not God or God's work. He's the center of God's work. Christ brings about peace on earth on behalf of the Prince of Peace. He is not the Prince of Peace. Christ deals the mighty blow against God's adversary as the mighty warrior of God, but he is not the mighty God. And Christomonism restricts revelation only to Jesus Christ. And in that case, Jesus becomes quite literally all. And this is not only a danger in devotional expression as we sing our hymns and pray our prayers, it is a danger in sophisticated theological statement as well. Because God is greater than Christ. And if we try to express God only through Christ, we make God smaller than he is. Now this is the shadow. We will be moving back. Do not worry. We say Jesus all, but we must remember God all, plus everything, plus even more. As Adventists, we're followers of an American flavor of Christianity, and this is a Bible I saw at the One Project in Seattle, as a kind of an idea of American Christianity. That's a joke. I married an American, and I taste the American flavor in more than just church, and it's delicious. You know, what are you thinking about? Big is better and more is good. And yes, big is often better and more is often good. But remember that the ideology that gave me the thing that I love the most in the world, bottomless drinks. Drinks that never get finished. You can drink as much as you want in a restaurant. That's Americanism, also gave us obesity. And it's the same in the church. The Adventist theology that saved us from this horrible, terrible theological desert of Calvinism also gave us charismatics and snake handlers. And in our church, we see shadows of this theology. And we see it mainly in sentimentality and emotionality. In famous hymns, what a friend we have in Jesus. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. And he walks with me and he talks with me and he tells me I am his own. Wonderfully warm, wonderfully personal hymns, very devotional, and also very much part of our U.S. evangelistic heritage. They're not anti-Trinitarian, but they're very Jesus-focused. As Secretary of the Union here, I have the joy of editing the translation of the prayer readings. Fortunately, someone else translates them, the week of prayer readings. And I remember last year with the first Sabbath, I was editing it, and the author described the deep emotional feelings that Jesus had when he formed his disciples out of clay. Now, if we want to put Christ in Eden, that's fine. And if we want to give him an even better role than John says, where he says, through Jesus all things came into being, that's fine. But imagining Christ forming people, creating the world, puts Christ too high, too much. Because then there's no place more for God, because God becomes superfluous, redundant. And thus, Jesus becomes quite literally all. And this I think is ludicrous, because the Bible teaches us something different. Yes, Jesus is the present truth, but Jesus is not all the truth. Jesus is not the sine qua non of theology. Jesus is much, but not all. And this American stuff is great, and Europeans love it, but not all of it. I mean, bottomless drinks are wonderful, but obesity is not. I love muscle cars, but the gas mileage, And we want Jesus, and that Jesus-focused thing, but we do not want to lose God. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we shouldn't say Jesus and all, and I don't say please leave all now, get away from this terrible place. The One Project is not flawed, of course not. But I'm outlining boundaries and placing us in them. High Christology is not Christomonism. By all means, let us say Jesus all. And in doing so, we are implying that Jesus is all, thanks to God, who is all. In fact, the drink is bottomless, but we are still fit. Jesus is all, but not all of all. So let's get back to the present truth, because we're wondering a bit. We read the passage from 2 Peter where it says, be established in the present truth. 2 Peter places us not in revelation from God, but in relation to God, established as we are in Jesus Christ, the present truth. And looking at our lives, looking at our salvation, it is clear. Being established in the truth is all and everything. In fact, from our point of view, for our salvation, it is clearly truth, present or not, that Jesus is all. And First Colossians talks about the same topic. Usually we quote the first half of that chapter, and I like the end a bit more. The first half talks about Jesus' supremacy, and at the end we get this verse where it reads, I became the gospel's servant according to God's commission that was given to me to make the word of God fully known. The author here tells us of his call. He is a servant of God, a servant of the word with a capital W, the Logos, the present truth, the one, who he wants to make fully known. And the next verse defines what this word is. The word is the mystery that has been revealed throughout the ages and generations, has now been revealed to his saints. Could we say that the truth that was not present before Jesus is that mystery? Could we say that after Jesus became present, the mystery was solved and we saw the cornerstone of the gospel? We can, because that mystery in the next verse is defined as Christ in us. To them God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches, the glories of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. It is him whom we proclaim, warning everyone and teaching everyone in all wisdom, so that we may present everyone mature in Christ. In other words, the mystery of present truth is visible. Where? In the people of God. 2 Peter calls us to remain established in the present truth, in fact, to remain in Jesus all. And Colossians says that the true gospel is not the teachings, the person of Christ in us as the people of God. We must proclaim Jesus all. We must not only remain in that present truth, but that present truth must remain in us. Jesus is not only all for our salvation, Jesus is all for our mission. Because the gospel is not a set of teachings. It's not the old school truth of my grandmother's generation, the revelation. It is the truth 2.0 of our generation, relation. The gospel is a relationship. And the fact is, the gospel is reflecting Christ in ourselves, in our relationships with others. The gospel is acknowledging Christ in other people, no matter how much we hate them. Because the present truth, unfortunately, is no longer present. Jesus is no longer present on this earth. He is no longer physically with us. God made the truth present, but the truth has returned to God, and now it is our task to make the truth present. We are the present truth of God on earth, having received the torch from the true present truth, Jesus Christ. And thus we proclaim Jesus all. We must be the present truth for the world. And thus we remain in trust, in the present trust, Jesus all. And so we live our lives focused on the present truth. Jesus all.